the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, your Arizona Cardinals, recording episode 790 here on a June afternoon in the off-season. Joining me is my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And while there is not really Cardinals news, there is big news that could impact the Arizona Cardinals should they go a direction, as we want to talk about one Brendan Sorsby, who has been all over the NFL news, college football news since early in the offseason, because he's been, well, it's a blend of potential talent and problematic behavior, court cases, appeals, rehab, suspensions. It's a mess. We've got former Indiana and Cincinnati quarterback Brendan Sorsby, who transferred to Texas Tech, expected to be one of the top quarterback prospects in college football for the 2026 season with the Red Raiders, who are, one of the best teams that money can buy, thanks to their oil NIL money. They went from irrelevance to a really great program last year. But he was kind of going to be that missing piece to put them into real contention. And then he admitted he gambled over $90,000 on college football since he was a freshman at Indiana, on his own teams, against his own teams, just with a problem. Went to rehab here in Arizona, completed a treatment, came out of there, was suspended. He appealed. He was granted an injunction so that he would be eligible for the 2026 season. Now the NCAA is appealing, asking for a stay of the injunction. And the news that came out today is that he is now applying for the NFL supplementary draft. Cardinals fans, who I think the Cardinals have taken the most have drafted the most players in the supplemental draft than any team, as they have done so 3 different times in their history by taking Tim Rosenbaugh. I think there was a tackle named Willie Wilson at one point, and then also safety Jalen Thompson back in 2019. And so that is the talk that we have. We've got Brendan Sorsby. And what we want to talk about first, and the idea is, well, one, what is Sorsby as a prospect? Is like, how talented is he? How concerning is the gambling thing? And is his best option the NFL, or to continue fighting to be able to play in college football this next season? So, what do we know? What is there to know about Sorsby, the quarterback, like the on-field guy?
Yeah, some of the people that I talk to and work on the scouting side of things with have some interesting opinions, and I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of smart people, way smarter than I am when it comes to doing this stuff. And one of the things that you see with the entire Sorsby discourse, you have games that are really bad. Sorsby has a game against, I believe, Utah, where he was 11 for 33 which is not ideal. And I believe
it was. He went 11-33 for 33, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 221 yards when Cincinnati was absolutely demolished by Utah. Utah, in fairness, was playing very good football at the time.
Right. And so when you look at a game like that, you can't make a decision off of one game, but you were kind of looking at Sorsby as a guy that was going to either take the next step or kind of be like Carson Beck. And I know Beck had some other situations with the injury and stuff where you wanted to see him play at a little bit of a higher level in his final season with, let's be honest, better talent, whether it was Beck, taking over at Georgia and they were very good still, right? But Georgia's, outside of Brock Bowers in that time frame, right? Like their skill players were not as great as even like when the Stetson Bennett era, right? And he goes to Miami and he's got all these weapons all over the place. The offense is a little more, open for him to kind of be the guy. Whereas at Georgia, much like Cardinals fans are hoping, he was just asked not to screw things up, right? Like, whereas at Miami, it was like, hey, get the ball to the playmakers, do what you need to do. And there's two ways to look at that, right? The first is, well, he's a good game manager. The second is, well, what happens in crunch time? And we kind of saw that in the national championship game, but at the same time too, his play against Ole Miss allowed them, help them get to that national championship game. So it's one of those things where you look at it, you see that you have a guy in Sorsby who has been up and down. Like he's had some really, really high level quarterbacking games. And he's had some games where you're like, not sure if this guy's draftable. And to me, that's always what the concern is looking at quarterbacks in general. I mean, this is a guy who was going into his fifth year, 2022 redshirted at Indiana, and then 2023 he was decent at Indiana, sub 60% completion, 1,587 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and then went to Cincy and had back-to-back decent years, right? About 2,800 yards each season, 18 touchdowns to 7 interceptions his sophomore year, and then in 27-5 last year, which again piqued everybody's interest because it was like, okay, he did that. And I'd have to really dive in, but I don't think any Cincy skill players were drafted this year. And so you're like, okay, so you're saying to yourself, I want to see. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and Cincinnati for the first 2/3 of the season looked really good. They looked really good. He threw an interception against Nebraska, and then over the next 7 games, they won 7 in a row. He threw 12, 14, 18, 20 touchdown passes and didn't turn the ball over. However, Cincinnati then lost their last 4 games, and he was picked off 4 times in 4 games. It was 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions in the final 4 games as Cincinnati went from being a conference contender to completely out of the mix over the last 4 weeks when they lost to Utah, U of A, BYU, and then TCU.
Right. And that's where, all of it kind of comes down to is you had a guy that was playing at a high level and then all of a sudden kind of fell off the face of the earth. And Jess, we can't really overlook this. Was that maybe because he was throwing games? So those are questions that have to be answered, questions that you have to be comfortable with. You and I don't, thankfully, right? Like we don't have to make those decisions. But the thing about Sorsby is he was a guy that can move. Last 2 years scored 9 rushing touchdowns. So, 27 total touchdowns as a sophomore, 36 total touchdowns as a junior. So like he's a guy that was really carrying a Cincinnati offense that is not, again, it's not exactly teeming with talent. Arm is, I would say, on the well above average side of things. He's got that arm talent where he can make throws from all over. He's got the ability to throw off different platforms. He's kind of, you hate to say this, but kind of Patrick Mahomesy in that way. Not nearly as good, so I don't want people to take that the wrong way, but not nearly as good. But he can do some of those things.
They did, by the way, have a couple of skill players that.
Okay.
The Jeff Caldwell, I think day 3 receiver, and tight end Joe Royer.
Okay, yeah, Royer was their big guy. I remember now. So, yeah, and so that's just it. Like you look at it, he's a guy that really carried the offense, but you have to wonder. I don't really understand maybe how you judge this, right? Like was he just bad or was he throwing games?
That opens up, like, here's the thing. That opens up the door because, like, when it comes to the gambling side of things, like, you can get over a gambling problem, especially one that's been treated, because the NFL has severe penalties for betting on football, period, as we've seen. The second it's noted, you are suspended for at least a year. The problem is if he's, and you have to question that, do you trust that he let his on-field play be impacted, point shaving, like if he was trying to influence those bets, or if it was simply a gambling problem where he felt like and we all know people at this point, especially with the proliferation of online sports gambling, it is so common. A couple of degenerates here, like we're smart about it, but young men in their 20s are the most susceptible to the compulsive gambling behavior that exists. And so you have to not only look at, okay, you can overlook the gambling problem itself with the right treatment, with the right support system. But if that impacted his on-field play as well, that's a major question mark that you have. And so you kind of have to look at things both two ways. You have to look, okay, as a quarterback, is he draftable? Is he day 1, day 2 draftable? Is he someone that I believe can be a franchise quarterback? And then you have to look at the gambling problem and say, is this a problem that he's taking care of? Is it like substance abuse, or is this something that will be a problem for competitiveness? Is that something we have to, and those are all questions we don't have to answer, but they are questions that teams must answer. So for you, is he, say, if he came out in the 2026 draft and he hadn't transferred to Texas Tech and we had none of this information about Brendan Sorsby with his gambling problem, what sort of quarterback prospect would he have been in this perceived past low-quality quarterback draft?
That's the great kind of unknown, right? That's the really good question about this. I look at some people that are like, oh, he would have been a day 1 pick, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, is he better than? Is
he better than Desmond Ridder? Was he a better prospect when Desmond Ridder came out of Cincinnati?
Yeah, he's a more intriguing prospect. He is on the older side, obviously going into his 5th year, so he's going to be 23 plus. Um, but if he would have come out this year, he would have been only 22-ish, 23 maybe. That, again, he's a guy that is like, if everything clicks and goes right, you could see kind of a Brett Favre-esque type of player. But that's taking into account like him learning some of the, I don't want to say basics, but some of the high level of quarterback play, right? Like how to layer balls differently, when to take some off a ball, when to put some more on a ball. His footwork is chaotic, I think is the best way to put it. He doesn't sit down in the pocket and make throws, and then he's not as good off platform as a guy like Kyler or a guy like Mahomes was. And then he's a guy that right now seems more of a type that if he needs to see it before he throws it, meaning like
anticipation is
right, it's not there yet, but he makes up for it because he does have that arm and he does have that kind of gunslinger mentality. So like all of those things, I would say where the Cardinals took Beck, that would have been an ideal place to take Sorsby. But in this draft, with where the quarterback talent lie, you probably would have had to take him in the top, 40 to 50 and been okay with that. I think that's a fair question to ask. With again, no off-field gambling issues, none to like concern yourself with. I think if you took him in that top 40 range, you'd be okay with it in this draft.
Yeah.
In next year's draft, like again, not having a year, or let's go back to last year's draft, you still had his 4 full years of work in. You're probably like hoping you get him more in the Beck range because he's not as refined and ready to produce. So those are the things you look at with Sorsby, the actual on-field football prospect. Again, we have to just push any questions or knowledge away.
So here's a question, and because the way you describe him, he's got the plus arm talent, he's got mobility. Now he played in the Big 12, but is he or is he not kind of like the Big 12 version and maybe Big 12 production version of Clayton Tune, who plus arm talent, lots of experience, and now granted he was playing at Houston when they were not in the Big 12, put up mad numbers, but also similarly built, similarly athletic, able to move. But we also saw Clayton Tune here. Like, if you had to put them side by side, do you think if Clayton Tune had played for Houston in the Big 12, would he have had Sorsby-like numbers in play?
That's the interesting part, is that I think Sorsby is a slightly more athletic guy, but I think Tune was a higher level passer at this point in his career. And so like that's what it comes down to, is like how would you grade out the ability and really give those two a look. And that's why I'm not exactly sold on like, oh, the Cardinals need to go get Sorsby. It's an interesting evaluation. But the reality becomes that this is a guy that has that massive question on top of probably top 75 talent, but not a guy that you're like, oh, he's a dude. Like we got to have him, right? Like that type of talent.
Yeah. So let's bring it to next. So coming next on the Rest of Your podcast, the Best Cardinals talk on the web. Let's talk about the Cardinals specifically and their quarterback situation and whether Sorsby should be an option. That's coming next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Red podcast, Best Cardinals talk on the web. As now we've talked about Brendan Sorsby entering or applying for the NFL supplemental draft, which, by the way, the league must approve. So there's a couple of factors here. If he's selected, where would you want them to go? Do you want the Cardinals to take him? And then, of course, there's the potential for suspension to start the year. But here's the thing: I think that becomes less of an issue if you clear him on the gambling stuff, because you're going to draft him in July and his first NFL reps are going to be in training camp. You're not planning on him playing in 2026 anyway, and so suspension or not, that he's not part of your at least early season plans anyway. But the question now is, the Cardinals need a quarterback for the future. We agree that perhaps some might see Sorsby as a potential guy who could be that guy. And had he been eligible and had he played for Texas Tech, it's very possible that he could have emerged, much like Fernando Mendoza seemed to come out of nowhere last year, to elevate himself to top quarterback in a class this next year that's expected to be, highly quality. It's going to be quality, I believe, with Arch Manning, Dante Moore, Darian Mentz. There are so many high-end or expected high-end quarterbacks. Now, we know some are going to fall because some aren't going to perform what they're expected to, and someone will emerge. Maybe Sorsby was going to have a Fernando Mendoza type ascent, especially with the talent there at Texas Tech, the ability to do have a run like Mendoza and Indiana had this last year. But at the same time, the Cardinals, they have Jacoby Brissett currently in a contract dispute. They got they got Gardner Minshew, they got Keaton Slovis, who we know is not going to be part of the team come the season, and then you got Carson Beck. There is the feeling that, well, why don't we? Why wouldn't the Cardinals take? Now, some are saying second round. I don't know if I wanted to use a second round pick in the supplementary draft. We believed Carson Beck would have been ideal as a day 3 pick. We get why they took him in round 3. I'm kind of the same thing with Sorsby. Like this year's blown anyway. So if you could get Sorsby in round 4, and then you roll into the season with Gardner Minshew, Carson Beck, and Brendan Sorsby, you get him in the building for a year. Yet. Now, what we know has to happen, you got to cut ties with Jacoby Brissett. You can't have 4 quarterbacks on your roster like that. But the question is, should the Cardinals draft Sorsby in the supplemental draft? And what round would you do it in?
I would take Sorsby. For me, I get, because it's easy for us to talk about this. I would say the 5th round. I think if you can go 5th, 6th, 7th, that's ideal.
That'd be perfect.
For a guy that that has a lot of questions that have to be answered still. If that's not if that's not a good enough area for him, or like other teams want to take that risk, I think it's reasonable. But there's just too many questions to go much earlier. Like, you could talk me into a 4th round, but realistically, I'd like to be in the 5th round. Here's the other thing, Jess. How much, and I know the response is you can never spend too much. So I understand that. But how much do you throw out a position in terms of draft capital? Because if the Cardinals are as bad as everybody expects, even with Sorsby on the roster, and they end up picking top 3 again next year, aren't you at that point saying like, okay, we need to draft a quarterback? Like it's going to be very hard to not take a quarterback.
Right. Like
If
how well does Beck, or assuming they play, how well does Beck and or Sorsby play in 2026, yet be a top 3 draft team? How good do they have to be to go, nah, we don't need a quarterback?
Right. And that's the thing, is you probably would have to say he would need to win 5+ games. If it was more than 5 games, then you're okay with it. But like, it would have to be 5+ games for them to feel confident, because that would probably get you right outside the top 5. And you're like, okay, like with the roster, with how bad everything was expected to be, we're in a better spot than we expected. That's how I would look at it. But again, it's easy for us to say because our job's not on the line, right? Like, and maybe Monty's is not either, but it should be, right?
We have documented this at length in previous shows. Yes.
So, I think if you're the Cardinals, a sixth to seventh round flyer is probably ideal, because it's, what 6th or 7th round picks are really making a huge difference.
We do always say 6th and 7th round picks are basically throwaway picks.
And so if you can get him there, I think you're at a spot that goes, okay, that makes us comfortable in terms of the investment. Let me ask you this, Jess. If they put in a, let's even say 5th round claim and win, that basically would mean that it's night time for Jacoby Brissett, right?
It would have to be like you've got 4 quarterbacks on the roster. If that's the case, you've got Keaton Slovis. No one believes anything about Keaton Slovis this year, and I mean, sorry guys, we all know he knows he's a lame duck quarterback, and he's doing the best he can to do well, to get tape out there so other teams will pick him up. He knows that, barring injury, he's the longest shot. But you're not going to go into the season with 4 quarterbacks. You're not going to have Jacoby. You're not going to have with Jacoby and Minshew and Beck and Sorsby, barring injury. But yeah, like this would be this is how you end the Jacoby Brissett nonsense. You cut him, you eat the $1.5 million in guarantees, and then you decide we're rolling with Minshew and the rookies. There's no other way to do it. There's no other way to do it.
No, and it does make a ton of sense, right? Like you're able to do all of that. And then you go forward and you see, what you have with Sorsby, you see what you have with Beck, and you just kind of roll with it. Because then while it is an investment, it's still not an overly, large investment in terms of the position, and you can look at things and go, okay, this makes a lot of sense for everybody. That's the way I think you have to do it. I mean, if you do it any other way, you're just kind of setting yourself up for failure, because I get it. You throw as much capital at the quarterback position as possible, but can you justify 2 top 100 draft picks in back-to-back drafts of a quarterback, and then, God forbid, a top 5 pick as well? So like 3 top 100 picks on the quarterback position in less than a year, basically, but like two draft cycles, like
it would reek of it's desperation. That's what that is. It reeks of desperation.
Right. And it would be it would just be a wild usage of things.
But I will say this. For the storyline that's coming into this year, and as effective as Jacoby Brissett was as a quarterback last year and the things that he accomplished, I'm on the record as saying he's the least interesting quarterback that is projected to be a starter. There is nothing interesting about Jacoby Brissett. Gardner Minshew, he's a ride. But I would be far more intrigued about the 2026 season as a whole if the Cardinals were to enter the regular season with Gardner Minshew as a starter and the young duo of Carson Beck and Brendan Sorsby as developmental projects that you have maybe about. I'm like, personally, I like, as the intrigue of the storyline goes, then the badness that is likely coming for the 2026 season seems bearable because, one, Gardner Minshew is fun to watch, and two, you have the potential of hope with two moderate, like in terms of Beck and Sorsby, you look at them as moderate investments into high ceiling players. And I've already, like, what I like about Beck is I believe he's a really high floor player to begin with. So if you picked up who is your backup quarterback for the next 4 years, and it's a third round pick, well, I'm okay with that. And he can be Jacoby Brissett. But if now, I don't know what the coaching staff feels about Jacoby Brissett, the player, because it sure feels like they still view him as top dog. But as a fan, as someone who covers this team, I'd be far more intrigued about this season and far more accepting of the bad play or lack of good play that we're expecting from this season if you had a mix of Minshew, Beck, and Sorsby, because at least there's unknown. Because with Jacoby, there's a lot of known. Like, oh, you're going to get numbers and not much else.
Yeah, and that's been his career, post Indy, that single season where he won 7 games. So still not a winning record, but he won 7 games. Recently it's just been a lot of empty calories, and that makes for great fantasy fodder, but like at some point you have to be a team that's relevant in the win column as well. So that'll be interesting to kind of see how this all plays out, just because this is a group and this is a decision that you really just don't know what the evaluation is and what the behind the scenes cost is. And there are questions that have to be answered about those last 4 games that you brought up. I mean, there just are. Whether it's fair or unfair, it's the reality, man. So how do NFL teams evaluate that, and what is the consensus? Because if the consensus is that he did throw the game,
you'd be undraftable in that case, right?
I was going to say, then the Cardinals can just pick him up as an undrafted free agent, right?
If that was the case, I don't think he's undraftable. There's no way you can do that. Now, gambling problem that he is actively getting treatment for or improving at. Okay. I can empathize with that and then building a future in the NFL, especially when there's a low investment in it. Now, whether the Cardinals do it or not, where do you think Sorsby's going to go? Do you think someone's going to go as high as round 2 or even round 1?
No, I think it'll be a 3rd or 4th round. I'm going to go 4th round. I'm going to say the Jets take him in the 4th round as like a flyer, and they'll have one of the higher overall supplemental picks to make. So
Yeah, and with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sea Red podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. We'll know what's coming with Sorsby in the weeks to come. The supplemental draft will be in July if it happens. But yeah, whether we have another show this week, we'll see what happens as new information comes around, topics and with that. But until then, the next time we're around, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up Sea Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up Red Sea, be Red Sea Red, and of course, Rise Up Sea Red.